Samantha from Jessima Tutorials here, and today I am going to show you how to create a really fun Mokume Gane using polymer clay, along with a couple of other techniques. Now what I've got here is Prima polymer clay in white, black and ultramarine blue, and these will all run out on the thickest setting of my pasta machine. And the first step is going to be to take those and to stack them on top of each other. And I'm just going to do the white and the black first, and I'm just going to trim that into a square. To make that a little quicker, you could use a square cutter instead of a blade. And I'm going to show you how to create a really nice Mokume Gane effect using cutters instead of texture stamps. And it's one of my favourite Mokume Gane patterns. Alright, and then I'm going to take that and I'm going to stack that on top of the blue. So they all need to be the same thickness. They don't all have to be this thick. You can start out with thinner layers. You will get the same result so long as they're all the same thickness. If you vary the thicknesses of each layer, you will get a different result. So play around with that if you feel like you want to experiment. There we go. And that is how the stack should look. Okay. And on the pasta machine, I have just got it on the thickest dial. Let me actually just bring it down a little bit so you can see. There we go. And it's on the number 1 setting. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to roll it through. Okay. And that's the result you should get. And then I'm going to take that down to the middle setting, which is number 3 on this machine, and I'm going to roll it through again. And there, that's how it should look, and then from there I am going to stack it. Okay, and then I'm going to cut this into sections, and I am going to stack those sections. I'll take that, and I probably am going to get about 3. I might get 4. Let's see if I can get 4. That would be good. Yeah, I'll be able to get 4 from this. And then take that and stack that, and I'm not too worried about it lining up perfectly. That's fine. Then if I pick that up, you can see that's how the layers will look. Then I'm just going to grab my roller and I'm just going to spend a little bit of time just getting those layers to stick together before I start imprinting them, because I don't want it to fall apart when I go to press it together. And with this Mokume Gane slab, I would recommend imprinting the black side, because if I bring this over, the way that I've stacked it is it's blue, then white, then black. And so if you cut it from this side, actually I'm getting this completely the wrong way around. Imprint it on the blue side, because the blue is sitting on top of the white, so when you go to shave it, the blue is going to appear lighter. If you want the blue to appear darker in your shaves, then go to imprint the black side, because the blue is going to be sitting on top of the black from that direction. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, that should work. Okay. And for this, you're going to want a selection of circle cutters. You can do the technique with different shapes, but I find I like the results best from circle cutters. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to take those and I'm going to just press them into this piece of clay at random, creating some interesting patterns. And I might skip some sizes if I feel like that's necessary. And just imprint them, and each time you do that you are pressing the clay down into the let me just grab something, here we go. You're pressing the clay down and smudging the different layers, and that is going to create a pattern later on. And that one did stick in the cutter, which is a pity. So if that happens, just press the clay down onto your tile a little bit so that it's sticks, and that way it won't end up with the clay sticking as much. But yeah, it's completely up to you how you go about creating that pattern. You can have the circles kind of wandering out from one another, or you can have them all sitting in the same circle together. And keep in mind, if you want to, you can use a texture mat instead of cutters. So yeah, there's lots of different ways that you could play around with this. Okay, and there you can see how chaotic that can get, but that's part of creating a really fun pattern. So now I am just going to squish that together a little bit from the sides, just to bring it back together, and then I'm going to use a roller to just flatten that out. And you could retexture it if you want. It depends on how busy of a pattern you want. This is going to give you a it's not going to give you a busy pattern, it's going to be fairly open spaced. You're going to be able to see some plain patches of colour, but you could go back over and texture again if you feel like it's a little too plain. So feel free to add as much as you want. Also, depending on how thick or thin your layers are, you're also going to find it more or less busy. So again, you can experiment around with the thickness and number of layers as well. Okay, and I'm just making sure everything's stuck together. This is about 1.5 millimeters thick at the moment. And I have a piece of paper just to the side there so that I can take the pieces that I shave off and lay them there. And I'm just going to use a flexible tissue blade to go in and take pieces out. And there we go, you can see how that looks. And this is a great example of what I was saying. This side is going to look really nice and light with the blue. This side, because the blue is sitting on top of the black, it's going to come out a little more grey. So that is something to keep in mind. And so you're going to actually end up with both patterns. If you feel like the black and white is a little bit too much, you can always make the blue layer a little bit thicker than those two. Or vice versa, depending on which colours you would like to see be a little more dominant in this. And I'm just going to take off a couple more slices. And there we go. I'm quite happy with that. Let me just take this one spot here. There we go. And I feel like that is busy enough. I don't feel like I need I don't feel like that needed more in the way of texturing, but if you would like it to be a little bit more open, you could use less layers of clay. I'm actually going in and I'm just shaving off some of the black because I feel that the black is a little bit too harsh, so I'm going through and just shaving those off to expose a little bit more of the white. And that shows you can have a fair bit of control over the Makume Gane. Okay, and there we go. I'm quite happy with that. Then just give it a burnish so that everything is flattened out, and I'll use my roller to do that. And this is just so that the pattern's smoothed out into one nice even piece that can be used. And as for those other pieces off to the side over there, those can be used on the back of this if you want to, or you can apply them to a completely different project or a separate veneer. So those can be used in a number of different ways. Okay, and I'm just giving it a roll because I don't mind stretching the pattern just a little bit. There we go, and I'm really happy with how that looks. Alright, and I want to make a complementary slab to go with the Makume Gane, and for that I'm going to be doing a Lisa Pavelka peel. So you're going to need a piece of black polymer clay, at least that's the colour that I've chosen. Feel free to use any colour you want. It is going to show, so just keep that in mind when creating your design. And I am going to be using silver metal leaf. Again, feel free to use whichever colour you want. Whatever your design calls for, really. I'm just going to take that and I'm going to place that down. And just give it a squish so that it sits on there. Okay. And then I am going to just lift that up, and I'm actually going to trim away the extra clay around the edge because I don't want that sticking in my stamp. The metal leaf will create a anti-stick layer, so I won't have to worry about cornstarch, but if there's exposed clay then that can end up sticking. I'll just lift that up, and here's the texture that I'm using. It's my shards texture stamp. There'll be a link to that in the description below. And you're going to take this and you're going to place that metal leaf side down, and then I'll just use something like a baby wipe so that my fingers don't stick, and you're then going to press that clay into the texture, and that's going to stamp the metal leaf down. Okay, and then I'm just going to lift that out of the texture and just go gently, because it can stick a little bit even with the metal leaf. So you do just want to kind of go with the texture stamp, lifting it out. So I've got a little sticky area over here, but it should come out. And you can apply cornstarch if you're really worried about it sticking, but you should be able to get it out. Right, now I'm going to place that down, give it a pat, and you could use it exactly like that if you want to, but what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to bring over some packing tape, and I'm going to use that to pick up the metal leaf from the top layer. And that's why I'm patting it down, to make sure everything is nice and even. And just take that, lay that over the top, smooth so that it sticks to the surface of the clay, and then lift it up. And I'm just going to bring over another one, place that over the top, again give it a smooth to make sure that it does stick down to the areas where you want it to lift. And you could use this technique with any texture stamp you want. And there we go. That is the result that it will give you. And if you'd prefer to just keep it all metal leaf, you could do that. But I wanted to show you how to create that effect, which I think is quite cool. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Alright, and I've just trimmed up the edges. And from here, I'm going to take this along with my other piece, and I just want to make sure that they're about the same size as each other. If this one is higher than this one, you can always just stretch that out a little bit, but it's not a big problem if they're not exactly the same size as each other, and they should be just about right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to cut it in half, and let me just check that will work. Yep, I'm going to cut it in half along the seam line, or at the center, so that when I go to cut out my piece, I'm going to have those shards kind of going in the direction of the cutter, so that it has a little bit of movement. I'm just going to place that to the side, and I'm going to show you how to make this. Very nice and simple. I'll take this, I'm also going to cut this one in half. I'll put one piece to the side. And you're going to turn that around, and we're going to cut this at the point where these sides meet. So I'm going to cut it about there. Just create a nice straight line, and then we can combine these two together. There we go. And I can see how that's going to look. Okay, and this needs to have a backing, so I'm going to take that and I'm going to actually use those pieces that I had from earlier. I'm just just going to place this on a piece of paper so I can move it around. I'm going to flip those over, and if they don't stick together, that's okay. Just gently place that down. And actually, before I do that, I feel like this line is a little too straight. It's not quite, I'm not quite happy with it. So I'm going to bring over a ripple blade. I'm just going to bring over, there we go. Here's the ripple blade, and I'm just going to trim up this edge here. Just be careful, these are sharper than you think they are. And I will do the same over here. Just take that and trim it up so that I get the ripple. And you could do that from the beginning instead of just doing the straight line. And then these should join up together fairly easily. There we go. And I feel like that has a little more movement and kind of fades each piece into each other, and so that's why I'm going with that. If you prefer it looking the other way, then of course you can leave it that way. Then take that, flip that over, and then I'm going to take these pieces from before, and it strikes me that it's not going to be even if I do it this way, so I need to get a piece of black clay. And I've just rolled together some leftovers to create that, and I'm going to use that to get those pieces together, just burnishing it. There we go. And then I'll just take these, and I'm not going to use all of them, just go place some of them down. There we go. And that should be enough to generally accommodate what I want. And then let me move this out the way because I can see myself accidentally flattening that. And then you can just use this as a buffer, and then use your roller to just flatten that out. And I'm okay with stretching it because you want it nice and flat. And I couldn't do that on the piece because I have that texture. So, there we go, that should work. Okay, and I'm just bringing over another piece of paper. My black is a little sticky, so might look a little sticky on camera. And let me bring over that other piece from before, and I'm going to lay this down and smooth, and that should hold the pieces together while also creating a situation where we have a nice backing. Now I'm going to flip that back over, and using a piece of paper I'm just very gently going to burnish it so that it's stuck to the back, and I'll do the same here very gently because that's a texture. Okay, and that should just about work. Then I'm going to grab this and I'm going to choose the spot. Okay, and I'm going to press down. And because I'm cutting this on a piece of paper, it probably is going to stick in the cutter, so just keep that in mind. But it does mean that our back should maintain a nice matte finish, which saves sanding time later. Okay, and don't forget to press down in the middle. Alright, and then I'll lift that up. Move that out of the way. Right. And there you can see how the back looks. And then I'll pop the middle out. And you can actually take this time to smooth around the edges if you feel that they need it. Let me actually flip that over. And then very gently pop around the edges to loosen it from the cutter. And there are a number of ways that you can avoid it sticking in the cutter. Such as you could use cornstarch. I don't find that completely reliable. You could also use cling wrap, but that tends to dome the edges, and if you dome the edges it's not very easy to apply resin later. So I prefer to just do it that way and then gently work it out of the cutter. But if you find that that is a big problem, burnish the piece of clay down onto something like a ceramic or a glass tile and then cut it out. You might need to sand the back though. But yeah, that is how the piece looks. I'm now going to create the other one for our earrings, and then we can move from there. Okay, and there we go. That's how they should look. And now these are going to go into the oven for a full hour at Primo's recommended temperature, and from there they're probably going to get a little bit of a sand after they've been baked, and I think I'm going to apply resin to finish them off. And here they are out of the oven, and I think they came out quite clean on the back. I did bake them on the piece of paper, and that has resulted in a nice matte finish on the back. And the sides are quite clean, nice and smooth. If you feel the need to sand them, you of course can, but I feel like they're perfectly okay to move on to the finishing stage. Now, something to bear in mind is if you do end up sanding it and you do want to sand the front, just be careful because you can alter the image with the Mokume Gane because you'll be sanding through layers. And also just be careful how you sand this part over here because it's a texture, and over sanding will cause the texture to dull. Also, if you are going to apply resin, you need to make sure that it is completely dry before applying resin. So if you do wet sand, I would recommend popping them in the oven for about another 5 minutes after sanding them and cleaning them, because that will make sure that the excess moisture gets heated off. And I'm going to be using this UV resin right here, and I'm just going to apply that to the surface of the clay, and that should bring out the colour and give it a nice glossy finish. Now of course you could finish this off with something like Varathane gloss varnish. It does need to be sealed because of the metal leaf that we've got on the surface there, so you do need to pick something to seal it, but I feel like resin is going to be a nice choice in this instance. And then just spread that resin around. Careful with the texture because the texture can cause the resin to easily spill off the edges, so work with less resin than you think you need, work it into the gaps and get it kind of spread out. And then if you need more resin after that, then you can add more. And then you're going to pop that under a UV light for about 15 minutes, or you can pop that in straight sunlight for 15 minutes and that will cure it as well. And then from there, they can be assembled. Alright, and here is how they look out of the UV light. You can see what the backs look like along with the fronts. Also, I figured out a new camera setup. You might have noticed that, so let me know what you think. If this is better than the previous one I was showing a little bit ago. But yes, this is how they look. I'm quite happy with that. Now I have decided that these are a bit too much for earrings, especially once I've put the UV resin on top, so I am going to instead turn them each into a pendant. So let me choose which one I like the best. I like this one the best. And I've got this cord over here which I think will work. And I just need to pop a hole in here. This is a pre-made cord. I already used it in one of my previous videos. And all I'm going to need is a drill. So I'm going to use this little pin drill here. And I'm just going to pop that right at the top of the piece. And this can be a little tricky because the resin is a lot harder to drill than the polymer clay. But once you kind of get a little hole going, then it's much easier to get that drilled. Alright, and then you're just going to drill straight through. I'll just show you the process and show you how long that takes. Once you get through the resin, you'll see that it goes much quicker, and then we can attach it to the bail. You could make smaller versions of these pieces and you could make earrings from them, but I felt like I wasn't going to show enough of the two veneers, so I decided to go with this size, but yeah, it did end up being too much for earrings. And there we go. Then just go through a couple of times to clean that hole out. And that should just about work. Then I'm going to bring over a jump ring, and I'll just open that up. And this hole might be a little small, let's see. Just got to get that angle right. There we go. Pop that through. And then attach that to the bale. And close up. And there we go. That's how I want to attach my piece, and that is how I would use them as a pendant. If you wanted to use them as earrings, you would also do the same thing, but instead of attaching it to a bale, you would instead attach it to an ear wire. But yeah, that is just about it for today's tutorial. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. I do really love this kind of Mokume Gane. It's a lot of fun. Play around with different shapes. The circles are the ones that I use the most when it comes to this, but of course you could use any kind of shape. You could coordinate it to match with the shape that you use as your actual piece shape, so that's something to keep in mind. Also bear in mind that this Lisa Pavelka peel will work with just about any texture stamp, so play around with that as well. But yeah, that is just about it. I do hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you did in the comments below, and if you'd like to support the channel so I can continue creating videos just like this one, please do consider becoming a member. There is a join button just below this video, or there is a link to my Patreon account, or there is a link to my Etsy store, Jessima Design, in the description below. And all of those are a great way to support the channel and allow me to keep making videos just like this one. But yeah, I do hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.